My name is Jessica Foster. People often say that every little girl dreams of one special moment, the moment her father walks her down the aisle. I dreamed about that day too. Ever since I was a little girl, I imagined holding my father's hand, smiling through happy tears, and hearing him whisper, "You'll always be my little girl." But my father, James Foster, never gave me that memory. Instead, he gave me the memory of an empty chair, the chair that should have belonged to him at my wedding, the chair that reminded me, every single second, that my own father had chosen his pride over his daughter. People looked around the ceremony, whispering to each other, "Where's Jessica's father? Why isn't he here?" Some guests assumed he was sick. Others believed he had been delayed. Only I knew the truth. He wasn't coming. Not because he couldn't, but because he refused to. As I stood in my wedding dress, trying not to cry, I remembered the last conversation we had only 3 days earlier. "Dad, please," I begged over the phone. "I don't want anything except for you to be there." There was a long silence. Then his cold voice answered, "If you marry Ethan Brooks, don't expect me to support your decision." I felt my heart sink. "He's a good man, Dad. He loves me." James laughed bitterly. "Love doesn't pay bills, Jessica. That man will never give you the life you deserve." I tried one last time. "I'm still your daughter." His answer shattered me. "Not if you walk down that aisle with him." Then he hung up. I stared at my phone for several minutes, hoping it would ring again. It never did. On my wedding day, every bride smiled while walking toward the altar. I smiled too, but behind that smile, my heart was breaking. My mother quietly squeezed my hand before the ceremony. "Your father is making a terrible mistake," she whispered. "One day, he'll realize what he threw away." At that moment, I didn't believe her. Because how could a father willingly miss the happiest day of his daughter's life? I thought that was the deepest pain I would ever feel. I was wrong, because I had no idea that 10 years later, the same man who refused to attend my wedding would stand outside my front door, crying, begging, just to meet the granddaughter he had never known. Before James became the man who refused to attend his own daughter's wedding, he was the man who made me believe in forever. We met when I was 24. I worked as a pediatric nurse at a hospital in Boston, and James had recently joined his father's construction company. Our first meeting wasn't romantic. It was actually embarrassing. I accidentally spilled coffee on his shirt while rushing to work. I apologized over and over again, expecting him to be angry. Instead, he laughed. "I guess fate wanted us to meet today," he joked. That simple moment turned into our first conversation. A few months later, it became our first date. James was thoughtful, kind, and protective. He always made me feel like I was the most important person in the room. Whenever I doubted myself, he reminded me how much I meant to him. 2 years later, he proposed. "Jessica," he whispered while holding my hand, "I don't want to imagine a single day without you." I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding wasn't extravagant. It was small, simple, filled with people who genuinely loved us. For a while, life was everything I had ever dreamed of. Then one spring morning, I discovered I was pregnant. I couldn't wait to tell James. That evening, I placed a tiny pair of baby socks inside a gift box. When he opened it, his eyes filled with tears. "We're having a baby?" I nodded. Before I could say another word, he hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "This is the happiest day of my life," he whispered. For the next several months, he attended every doctor's appointment. He painted the nursery himself. Every night, he talked to our unborn baby. "I can't wait to meet you, little one." Watching him become excited about fatherhood made me fall in love with him all over again. But not everyone shared our happiness. His mother, Margaret Hayes, never accepted me. She believed James should have married the daughter of one of her wealthy friends instead. To her, I was never good enough. His younger sister, Rachel, followed Margaret everywhere. If Margaret disliked someone, Rachel disliked them even more. At first, their comments were small. "Jessica trapped James with a baby. She isn't good enough for this family." I ignored them. I thought they would eventually change. Instead, They became crueler. One afternoon, when I was 7 months pregnant, I walked into the kitchen and heard Margaret speaking to Rachel. "That baby doesn't even look like it belongs in this family." Rachel laughed. "James is too blind to notice." I froze. Before I could enter the room, Margaret lowered her voice. "If we don't open his eyes now, he'll spend the rest of his life raising another man's child." My heart stopped. I quietly walked away before they saw me. That evening, I told James everything. He smiled and kissed my forehead. "Don't listen to them," he said. "I trust you more than anyone." For a while, his words gave me peace. But lies have a dangerous power, especially when they're repeated every single day. Margaret started leaving anonymous letters on James's desk. Rachel created fake stories about seeing me with another man. Whenever James came home from work, they filled his mind with more suspicion. Jessica is hiding something. Don't be fooled. Open your eyes before it's too late. At first, James defended me. My wife would never betray me. But weeks turned into months. The lies never stopped. Slowly, the confident man who once trusted me without question began asking strange questions. "Jessica, where were you this afternoon? Who called your phone? Why didn't you answer me right away?" I tried to reassure him every single time. I even handed him my phone one evening. "Look through everything if it'll give you peace of mind." He pushed it away. "I don't want your phone," he said quietly. "I just want the truth." Those words terrified me. Because I realized something heartbreaking. He no longer believed my words. He believed the doubt his family had planted inside his heart. As my due date got closer, James became colder. He still lived in the same house, but emotionally, he was already drifting away from me. I kept praying that once our daughter was born, he would hold her in his arms, look into her eyes, and finally realize how wrong everyone had been. I had no idea that the day our daughter entered this world would also be the day my husband stopped being my partner. The night I went into labor, I wasn't afraid of the pain. I was excited. For 9 months, James and I had dreamed about meeting our baby. I believed that the moment he held our daughter in his arms, every doubt his mother had planted inside his heart would disappear. I couldn't have been more wrong. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, my contractions became stronger. I gently shook James awake. "James, I think it's time." He immediately got out of bed and grabbed the hospital bag. For a brief moment, I saw the husband I had fallen in love with. He helped me into the car, held my hand during the drive, and kept telling me everything would be okay. I smiled through the pain. "Our little girl is finally coming." He smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. When we arrived at the hospital, the nurses rushed me into the delivery room. Hours later, after one final push, the room was filled with the sweetest sound I had ever heard. My baby girl cried for the very first time. The nurse gently placed her in my arms. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, tiny nose, beautiful brown eyes. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Welcome to the world, my princess." Tears rolled down my face. I looked toward James. I wanted to see him smiling. Instead, he stood completely still. His face was cold, expressionless. The nurse walked toward him with our daughter. "Would you like to hold your baby?" He looked at her for only a few seconds, then slowly stepped backward. "No." The nurse looked confused. I'm sorry?" James kept staring at our daughter. Then he looked at me. His voice was calm, too calm. "She's not mine." The entire room fell silent. The nurse froze. The doctor looked up from the medical chart. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. "What did you say?" He looked directly into my eyes. "My mother was right. You cheated on me. And I won't raise another man's child." My heart shattered. I held my newborn daughter tightly against my chest. "James, look at her. She's your daughter. I swear on everything I love." But he shook his head. "I've heard enough lies." Then he turned around and walked out of the delivery room. He didn't kiss his daughter. He didn't even look back. The door closed, and with it, the family I had dreamed of building disappeared forever. I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not because he left me, but because an innocent little girl had just been rejected by her own father. The nurse quietly placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." A few hours later, my parents arrived. My father gently picked up his granddaughter, his eyes filled with tears. Growing up, my father wasn't always the cold man people would eventually know. When I was little, James Foster was my hero. Every Saturday morning, he'd take me to the park. He taught me how to ride a bicycle, cheered at every school play, and never missed a birthday. Whenever I was scared during a thunderstorm, I'd run into his arms. He would smile and say, "Don't worry, princess. As long as I'm here, nothing will ever hurt you." Back then, I believed him. But life has a strange way of changing people. After my mother became seriously ill for almost a year, my father buried himself in work to pay the medical bills. His small construction company slowly grew into one of the biggest businesses in the city. The more successful he became, the less time he spent with us. Business meetings replaced family dinners. Phone calls replaced conversations. Money slowly became more important than memories. When Mom finally recovered, I thought everything would return to normal. Instead, it got worse. Dad believed success was the only thing that mattered. He wanted me to study business. He wanted me to work for the family company. Eventually, he wanted me to marry someone from one of the wealthy families he did business with. But that wasn't the life I wanted. I became an elementary school teacher. I loved helping children learn and grow. The salary wasn't impressive. The hours were long. But every afternoon, I went home knowing I had made someone's day a little brighter. Dad couldn't understand that. "You graduated with honors," he would say. "And this is what you choose? Teaching?" I always smiled and answered, "I'm happy, Dad." He would shake his head. "Happiness doesn't build a future." Those words created a distance between us that neither of us knew how to cross. Then, everything changed the day I met Ethan Brooks. We met by accident. One rainy evening, my car broke down outside the school where I worked. I stood there completely frustrated, trying to call a tow truck. That's when a pickup truck stopped beside me. A man rolled down the window. "Need some help?" That man was Ethan. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He owned a small neighborhood auto repair shop and worked harder than anyone I'd ever met. Instead of flirting with me, he fixed my car. When I offered to pay him, he smiled. "How about you just let me buy you coffee someday?" I laughed. "That's much cheaper than repairing an engine." He laughed too. And somehow, that simple conversation became the beginning of our story. Over the next 2 years, Ethan showed me what real love looked like. He remembered the little things. He brought me lunch when I worked late. He visited my mother without being asked. He treated every person with kindness, no matter who they were. For the first time in my life, I wasn't impressed by someone's bank account. I was impressed by their heart. The day Ethan proposed, I didn't hesitate for a second. I said yes before he even finished asking. I couldn't wait to tell my parents. Mom cried happy tears. But Dad didn't smile. Instead, he asked only one question. "What does he do?" "He owns an auto repair shop," I answered proudly. Dad's face immediately changed. "A mechanic?" "Jessica, tell me you're joking." I shook my head. "I love him." He stood up from the dinner table without finishing his meal. "Love fades," he said coldly. "Money doesn't." That was the first night my father walked away from me. Sadly, it wouldn't be the last. Because from that moment on, he wasn't trying to understand the man I loved. He was trying to destroy the future we were building together. The wedding reception was still going on when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Hello?" A trembling voice replied. "Jessica?" It was James. I immediately stepped away from the guests. "What do you want?" For a few seconds, all I heard was crying, not quiet tears, the heartbreaking cries of a man whose entire world had just collapsed. Finally, he whispered, "I know the truth." I closed my eyes. Somehow, I already knew what he meant. My Aunt Eleanor found a locked box in my mother's attic. There was a DNA report inside. He paused. The test was done 25 years ago. My mother secretly collected samples after Madeline was born. I remained silent. James continued, "The report proved Madeline is my biological daughter. My own mother hid it. My own sister helped her. They spent years telling me you cheated. They forged letters. They spread rumors. They destroyed my family. His voice completely broke. And I believed them. I leaned against the wall, not because I was shocked, but because hearing the truth after 25 years felt strangely empty. No report, no confession, could give my daughter back the father she deserved. James continued speaking through his tears. I confronted Mom. She admitted everything. She said she never wanted you because you came from an ordinary family. She thought she was protecting our family name. Rachel admitted she helped because she wanted me to marry someone richer. I closed my eyes. 25 years. Destroyed because of pride, James whispered. I told them to leave my house. I told them I never wanted to see them again. But Jessica, my punishment isn't losing them. My punishment is realizing I abandoned my own daughter. He started crying again. I missed her first words, her first steps, her birthdays, her school plays, her graduation, and today I missed walking her down the aisle. Every word felt heavier than the last. Finally, he asked, Please, can I come? I looked through the reception hall. Madeline was laughing with Ethan during their first dance. For the first time in years, she looked truly happy. I quietly replied, You can come, but don't expect the past to disappear. 40 minutes later, James walked into the reception hall. The music slowly faded. Guests turned toward the entrance. No one spoke. He looked older, broken, like a man carrying 25 years of regret on his shoulders. Then his eyes found Madeline. She froze. The room became completely silent. James slowly walked toward her. Halfway across the room, he dropped to his knees. Right there, in front of everyone. His voice shook. Madeline, I don't deserve to call you my daughter, but you have always been mine. I'm the one who failed you. Tears streamed down his face. I believed lies instead of believing you and your mother. I threw away 25 years. I wasn't there when you needed me. I wasn't there when you cried. I wasn't there when you dreamed of having your father beside you. And today, I almost missed the happiest day of your life. I'm so sorry. The entire hall was silent. Many guests were wiping away tears. Madeline slowly walked toward him. She looked down at the man who had broken her heart over and over again. Then she quietly asked, Do you know what hurt the most? James slowly shook his head. It wasn't that you missed my wedding. It wasn't even that you missed my birthdays. She wiped away her tears. The worst part was spending my whole childhood believing I wasn't good enough for my own father. James completely broke down. He couldn't even speak. Madeline gently continued, I used to sit by the window every Father's Day. I thought maybe this year you'd come. You never did. James buried his face in his hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She looked at him for several seconds. Then she gently helped him stand. I forgive you. Hope filled his eyes. Before he could speak, she softly added, But forgiveness doesn't give us back 25 years. You can't become the father I needed as a little girl. That time is gone forever. James nodded slowly. I know. I'll spend the rest of my life living with that regret. He turned toward me, his eyes filled with tears once again. Jessica, I destroyed the best family I could have ever had. You warned me, but I chose my mother's lies over the woman who never lied to me. I smiled sadly. I stopped waiting for your apology years ago. The only thing I ever wanted was for our daughter to know none of this was her fault. James nodded. It never was. Before leaving, he looked at Madeline one last time. I don't expect a place in your life, but if you ever need me, I'll spend whatever years I have left trying to become the father I should have been. Madeline gave a small, respectful smile. Then she returned to Ethan, to her future, to the family built on trust instead of suspicion. I watched James quietly walk out of the reception hall. This time, no one stopped him. Some people think revenge means making those who hurt you suffer. But life had already done that. James wasn't punished because we hated him. He was punished because he finally understood what he had thrown away. Sometimes, the greatest regret isn't losing the person you loved. It's realizing you never truly knew their worth until it was far too late.